Hi guys, welcome to my channel. As the title says, this is a video about my go-to makeup brushes. I narrowed everything down and these are the brushes I would use to complete a full face of makeup. The first brush is this Kevyn Aucoin foundation brush. It's a nice dome shape. It is incredibly dense. There are tons of bristles packed in there. It does a really good job of applying the product to the face and not sinking down into the middle of the brush just because it's so dense. This next brush is very similar to the Kevyn Aucoin brush, but it's slightly smaller and a little less dense. This is from Mer. It's their foundation brush. I like to use this for very sheer coverage foundations. It's very light and very small and compact for the face. Up next is a brush I like to use for concealer if I am using a brush. Normally I use a sponge, but this is the Smith 122 brush. It's very small and very compact and again very dense. The density I think helps with liquids and creams because it sort of minimizes the sort of lines and the streakiness you'd see in a brush when using a liquid. This big brush is my favorite brush of all time. It is the Mer The Powder Brush. I use it for all over the face translucent powder. It is soft, it is luxurious, it covers a great deal of surface area, especially if you're me and you have a big face. I think it spreads powder evenly and beautifully and it feels amazing to the touch. Moving on to bronzer, this is Marc Jacobs The Bronze Brush. This is the white version, but it normally comes in black. I love this. It's such a nice bulbousy but dense brush that it really spreads out the bronzer without getting too sloppy and also without making it just look kind of like a harsh line on your cheek. I don't contour a lot, but when I do, I like to use this MAC 140S. It's like a very short, dense kind of fat fan brush. I think it works a little better when contouring because it won't leave sort of a harsh line. The softness of it really helps blend it out and make it look a lot more seamless, a lot more blended and a lot more natural, but also still very made up. This brush is the newest to my collection. It is the Kevyn Aucoin Neo Powder Brush. I use it for blush only. I like to take the pointier end of it to apply the blush to my face and then use the more rounded end to blend it out. It has kind of a dip in the middle to contour to your cheek, and I really like that. It definitely helps if you're not the best at blending. If you have something in that shape, it just makes it a little bit easier to apply and to blend. The only highlighter brush I use is this Charlotte Tilbury Powder and Sculpt brush. I don't know if it was actually used for highlighting, but that's what I use it for. I like that it kind of spreads out sort of wide and then tapers back in. The bristles are packed very loosely, so it makes a nice, soft, even distribution of the highlight powder when you apply it to the top of the cheeks. For this portion, this is all about eye brushes, and I narrowed it down to 7. These are my 7 essential brushes for making any eye look. It was really difficult because this area is where I have the most brushes. I probably have 20 plus eye brushes, and I narrowed it down to 7. My ride or dies, what I would need if I wanted to do any eye makeup look. First up is the MAC 224. I use this brush solely to blend out shadow that has been put in the crease. I usually use it to blend above and buff out any sort of look that I have to sort of soften. I use this a lot for transition colors and if I'm trying to do a nice subtle smoky eye. That's the only thing I use it for. I also use this Marc Jacobs the Crease brush. I find that I can't really blow out a smoky eye or the crease, but that this really just defines sort of the inner crease area, but also going slightly above. It sort of gives a nice soft touch to the crease and right above it. If I had to choose between this brush and the MAC brush for the crease, I would probably choose this one just because it's smaller, a little more compact and soft, and you can have a little bit more control over the entire crease. Following those brushes, this is the MAC 217. I use this brush purely to stay in the crease and slightly below on the lid. I don't think it does a very good job of sort of buffing and softening, but when you're really trying to define and color in that crease, this is the perfect brush for that. It gives a lot of control because it's very densely packed. For the lid, or all over from the crease down to the lashes, this is the Marc Jacobs The Shadow brush, and I use this brush purely to put any sort of color that I'm using, just a sort of wash of color all over. It gets the job done. It's nice and flat and round, and it fits right in your eyelid area. I really like it. It really works well with matte shadows. This next brush is the MAC 242. This is my favorite, absolute favorite brush for packing on any sort of foil or shimmer or glitter onto the lid, especially in the center. When you're trying to get a pop of color, it's very flat and dense, and it really grabs those very shiny pigments and helps them stick to your eye. It's the best. This is the Marc Jacobs, the Smudge brush. I use this on the bottom part of the lash line. It's very soft and delicate, but still blends out the color, especially since you're applying this on the delicate skin under your eye. Going along with the smudge brush, I also use this MAC 212. I like to use this to put any sort of eyeshadow right on my lash line and blend it into whatever shadow the smudge brush has blended out. I think it gives a nice, beautiful look. The bristles are quite soft, especially for being a flat definer. There are others on the market, but I think this one is really soft, especially because that skin is so sensitive. Your eye skin is the most delicate on your face. I also wanted to take the time to mention this seamless flat paddle foundation brush from Marc Jacobs. If you're more into this kind of brush, I highly recommend this one, especially if you're using thicker full coverage foundations. Not a lot of streaks, it gives a nice coverage, and it feels very gentle to the skin. I highly recommend really any Marc Jacobs brushes. I also realized that when I started this is the Smith 124, and I didn't include it with my bronzer, but this is my go-to for using my cream bronzers. I like the smallness of it and the density of it. I like the angle so that when I'm applying bronzer to the lower part of my cheek, it really fits and shapes around there and makes it much easier to define, as I'm not the best at it. Last but not least is this Tarte eyelash applicator. Very simple, very basic, but it's my go-to. Okay guys, that was it. That was my go-to holy grail ride or die makeup brush collection. If I had all of these brushes, I could create any look that I wanted to. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe at your discretion. Thank you.